Spring break is this week, and given that I had a week off from school, I decided to check out a video game from the local library to play for the week. Two games caught my eye while I was there. The first was The Amazing Spider-Man, and the second was 1912 Titanic Mystery. I had a really hard time selecting a game, so I thought to myself, would I rather play another Spider-Man game like the 8 that I already have, or would I rather play what is, according to the game's box, a puzzle-oriented mystery-solving adventure game, something that I've never really played before? I decided to branch out. I decided to try something new, so I chose Titanic Mystery, and I chose wrong. I chose very, very wrong. I tell you this now with no hyperbole. Titanic Mystery is one of the worst games that I have ever played. Point to any game that I've reviewed on this little channel of mine. I would rather play Batman Vengeance. I would rather play Dark Tomorrow. I would rather play Superman 64 beginning to end without my Game Shark than play Titanic Mystery a second time. This thing is an atrocity. This thing should not be played. This thing isn't a game. It's a piece of shit and it deserves to die! The story of the game is pretty simple. To mark the 100th anniversary of the sinking of the Titanic, a new ship called the Titanic II is commissioned and sets out on a maiden voyage with several descendants of the original Titanic passengers. You know, the ones that didn't experience horrible deaths of drowning and hypothermia. Anyway, your completely anonymous character goes to his room aboard the ship and finds a letter warning him that there's a bomb on the ship and that the bomb will detonate if you try to tell anybody about the bomb. So it's up to you to find the bomb, find out who planted it, and find out why the bomber is specifically targeting you to seek out the bomb before the ship is destroyed. Probably the best way to explain why this game sucks is to just take you through what happens when you first start the game. This is what it was like to dive right into Titanic Mystery. At the start of the game, you see sort of a map of the ship, and the only place you're allowed to go is your room. Once you go to your room, you see a Victorian-style bedroom with a ton of shit lying all over your room, and you're told that you need to find 10 briefcases. Okay, so this is the first puzzle of the game. I need to find 10 briefcases so I can clean all the shit out of my room. That's lame, but fine. Seriously, what the hell am I looking at? There are photoshopped images all over my room, not even well photoshopped images because not one of these objects looks like it actually belongs in the room, and the screen is so damn cluttered with crap that it's impossible to find anything. Seriously, look at this screen. There are just so many completely random items just pasted all over the screen, and most of the images don't even try to blend into the environment. It just looks like someone put stickers all over the screen. Why is there a tub of ice cream attached to the wall? Why was it just floating there? Did somebody superglue it to my wall? Why would anybody do that? Who the hell left a basketball on my bed? Why is there a tape dispenser under my bed, and why would someone even bring a tape dispenser into my room? What use could they possibly have with it in here? They didn't put any thought into the crap they just photoshopped into this picture. So after I find the 10 briefcases and think I'm done with this lame-ass puzzle, the game tells me that now I need to find 12 other completely random items that have also been photoshopped into the picture. And after I find those 12 items, I'm told that I need to find 3 pieces of a pair of tweezers. Once I have the tweezers, they are added to my inventory, and I can use the tweezers to analyze the torn-up piece of paper that's lying on the bed. And I don't know why the game tells you that the tweezers have been added to your inventory, considering that you never use them ever again. After this point, you don't even have the option of accessing an inventory at any point in the game. Anyway, you assemble the torn-up piece of paper into a 5x5 puzzle, which tells you that there's a bomb aboard the ship, and then an anonymous letter from the bomber is delivered to you, and here's where you're given the ability to visit other portions of the ship. So about now I was thinking, okay, that first puzzle was freaking stupid, but maybe now is where I can travel around the ship gathering clues and interrogating crew members and trying to deduce who the bomber is. So I go to the new area, the radio room, and guess what? The radio room is another giant picture filled with Photoshop shit, and now I have to find 10 telephones, another 12 random objects, and 3 more parts of an inventory item. And this is where an awful realization sank in. This is all the game is. This is all you do throughout the entire game. All the game is looking at pictures cluttered with random smaller pictures and clicking on the random items until you find the ones the game is asking for. Wait, is that a skull? Who the hell superglued a human skull to the back of this chair? These pictures make no sense! Every single level in the game is you looking at what I'm sure is a lovely recreation of the environment from the Titanic with random crap pasted all over it. You find 10 of one item, 12 random items, and 3 pieces of an inventory item that you need to access a puzzle. Once you solve the puzzle, the level ends and you move on to the next level where you just do all of that crap again on a different screen. I was expecting an adventure game going around the ship gathering clues and trying to solve a mystery, and what I got was I Spy Titanic Edition! The game is so damn boring. Every level is exactly the same. You look at a cluttered pile of crap and you click on whatever items the game is asking for. Most of the items can be found by just randomly clicking everywhere on the screen because the game doesn't penalize you for incorrect guesses of where an item is. The items that you don't find by clicking randomly, you have to find by searching the screen, which is very tedious and boring. The gameplay isn't stimulating, it's just dull. Click around until you found everything the game is looking for, and then you click some more. If you're having difficulty finding an item or you're bored and don't feel like looking for it, you can use a life preserver to instantly point out one of the items you need. You can get extra life preservers by finding them among the levels. If you find a life preserver during the first part of the level, when you're searching for 10 of one item, the life preserver will reappear for the second part of the level, and if you solve the end level puzzle before finishing the second half of the stage, I think you can get the life preservers to reappear again. It doesn't happen all the time, so I'm guessing that when it does happen, it's because of a game glitch. It's just, does this even qualify as gameplay? The game asks you for an item and you click around until you find it with absolutely no penalty for screwing up. This isn't stimulating. This doesn't require thought. You just look at a picture and you click on it. This is as much gameplay as navigating the menus on a DVD is gameplay. And the game even has a multiplayer mode so you can have a friend clicking around looking for random objects along with you. Doesn't that sound like fun? The only parts of the game that actually resemble a game are the puzzles at the end of each level. There actually is a lot of variety to the puzzles, to the game's credit, but with one or two exceptions, the puzzles take an absolute maximum of 5 minutes to figure out, and the puzzles don't even make any sense with regards to the story. The first puzzle, fine, you're assembling a note warning you about the bomb. Second puzzle is a slide puzzle where you assemble a picture of a passenger aboard the first Titanic. It's probably a picture of the woman who's important to the bomber, so you can justify that puzzle. But what in the high holy hell do playing Othello, rearranging toothpicks to form a fish, or filling wine bottles to exactly 4 cups have to do with finding the bomb aboard the Titanic? These puzzles don't make any sense. And even though the vast majority of the puzzles are dirt simple to figure out, you still have the option of skipping puzzles and continuing the game without having completed them. The meat of the game is these puzzles that actually require you to think, and you're given the option of skipping every single one of them. That's like if you could skip the fights with Bowser in Super Mario Bros. You just don't do that! The only puzzle that I had difficulty with was the puzzle where you have to place a few chess queens on a chessboard so that none of the queens can attack each other. And I thought this puzzle was glitched and unwinnable because the game kept rejecting correct answers until I figured out that you're supposed to place 4 queens on the board instead of 3, which the game does not tell you! And naturally, there's no penalty for skipping puzzles other than 10 minutes getting tacked onto your score when you complete the game. Oh darn, that's just terrible. Since the game's gameplay can barely even be called gameplay, the only thing that kept me from immediately taking the game back to the library and picking up Spider-Man was the game's story. What can I say, I'm a sucker for a mystery story. As you complete levels, you get pages from the diary of a woman who was aboard the original Titanic, and the bomber tells you that the diary will tell you where the bomb is. The diary tells the story of a young woman named Eleanor with an illegitimate child named William, who's traveling to America to escape the social persecution she faces in Ireland. She runs into the child's father, Edward, who doesn't know he's the father, and the guy's new fiancée, Cassandra, a manipulative gold-digging bitch. It's a pretty good story, highlighting the wonder the passengers experienced aboard the Titanic and the sharp divide between the lower class and the upper class passengers. It's a good little story, even though I'm fairly certain the diary is completely fabricated. But the diary is pretty much the only part of the story that even qualifies as being a story. The game gives you 6 suspects of who the bomber could be: the captain, a musician, your steward, a reporter, the bartender, or the doctor. But I'd be damned if I could actually tell you anything about a single one of those characters. The game tells you nothing about who any of these characters are. It tells you nothing about these people's personalities. All of these characters are completely anonymous. I don't know any of these people. You have a brief dialogue with one of the characters before each level, but every single line that these people spout is just trivia about the original Titanic. You don't interact with any of these characters because every time you talk to one, they just say, "Hey, did you know that only 3 of the 4 smokestacks on the Titanic were functional? The 4th was added as a good luck charm like a 4-leaf clover. Guess it didn't work out for them, huh?" The game goes out of its way to make sure that you know absolutely nothing about any of these characters because none of these characters do anything except puke Titanic factoids on you. Sure, the Titanic information is fascinating, but there is no kind of narrative woven around these facts. It's just the game lecturing you about the Titanic. And by the way, the name of the band that's playing aboard the ship is the Icebergs. I know they thought they were being clever, but I'm pretty sure that if a band called the Icebergs tried to perform aboard the Titanic too, they would get the shit slapped out of them! One of the early dialogues with the captain tells you that his grandfather was a child aboard the Titanic and that he and his mother traveled in third class. I pretty much figured then and there that the captain had to be the bomber because he's obviously a descendant from William in the diary, but then later in the game you find out that you're the descendant of William, something your character knows from the start of the game. Some people might call that a shocking plot twist, but I call it, why the hell don't I know anything about my own character? Did my character at no point realize that he was reading his great-grandmother's diary? Did he never stop to muse upon that fact? Your character never speaks. He never interacts with the other characters. He just gets talked at by other people. You never hear a single thought that runs through your character's head. He doesn't consider maybe trying to catch the bomber rather than just running to every damn room on the ship looking for diary pages. Your main character isn't a character! Pretty much the only thing you learn about the suspects is that each of them is descended from a surviving passenger aboard the original Titanic. The only two characters descended from characters who could arguably be in the diary are the captain, who I thought was descended from William, and the reporter, whose great aunt I thought might be Cassandra. And since you find out about halfway through the game that the captain isn't descended from William because he's your ancestor, your list of viable suspects drops to 1. After all, the bomber is obsessed with the diary, and none of the other suspects have ties to the diary. Really, the game doesn't even try to hide the fact that the mystery story in the modern day is just the framing device for the story told in the diary, because the story set in the modern day doesn't have any characters that you can call characters, and it doesn't have a single twist or development. You find out that there's a bomb on the ship, and you spend the whole game chasing after the bomb. That is literally, no hyperbole, all there is to the modern portion of the story. The game's progression is really boring. You keep on looking for hidden objects and recreations of the Titanic's rooms, you solve a puzzle at the end of each room and get a page from the diary. After you clear a few levels you get another letter from the bomber, which tells you absolutely nothing, and then the next few levels open up. The gameplay never changes. You just stare at a picture, clicking around until you find all the Photoshop images, and then you move on to a new picture and do it all over again. And again. And again. The game has a grand total of 32 puzzles that you need to solve, but the game is significantly longer than 32 levels because the game regularly forces you to replay levels that you've already completed. The only difference being that you have to find 12 different completely random objects than you did the first time. Hell, on my playthrough, I was forced through a few of the levels 4 times! 4 times! This game is already about as lazy can possibly get since each level is exactly one screen, and now the game is recycling levels! You couldn't even be bothered to Photoshop enough pictures together to fill out the game, so you're forcing us to spend more than half the game visiting levels we've already beaten? That's bullshit! And get this, the game tells you that it has 30 puzzles. What it doesn't tell you is that most of the puzzles are puzzles that you've already completed with different solutions. You play Othello with red and blue pieces, then later you play Othello with silver and gold pieces, and that's treated as being 2 separate puzzles. I swear to God, this game is setting a new record for how little effort you can put into making a video game. The only redeeming factor to this game is that the story told in the diary is really good, but here's the thing that pissed me off. I think the game knows that the diary entries are the only motivation the player has for playing the game, because once you solve the final puzzle of the game takes away your ability to read the diary. If I want to read the diary in its entirety, I have to play through the game all the way through a second time, which I'm not going to do. Edward discovers that he's William's father, and he decides to leave Cassandra to start a life with Eleanor. The only reason he was going to marry Cassandra in the first place was because she became great friends with his parents, and his parents pressured him to get hitched. But once Edward breaks the news to Cassandra, she lures Eleanor to the ship's steam bath and poisons her and leaves her for dead. Cassandra tries to kill William too, but the Titanic hits the iceberg and starts sinking before she gets the chance. Edward gets wise to the whole scheme and gets William aboard a lifeboat before going to save Eleanor, but they don't make it out in time before the ship sinks, with Cassandra and William surviving. It's a really good story, and I wish I could have read it beginning to end now that I've got all the pages, but no, I have to play through this pig shit again without solving the final puzzle to get that privilege. As for the bomb, since Eleanor was poisoned in the steam bath, it's pretty obvious the bomb is hidden in the steam bath of the ship, but the game has so little faith that you can figure this out on your own that it flat out tells you where the bomb is. After solving one final puzzle, you find out that the bomber is the steward? God damn it, I was wrong. It turns out that Cassandra gave birth to a son 8 months after the Titanic sank, and the steward is descended from that son. Edward's fortune has been sitting in a trust for 100 years since neither William nor Cassandra could lay claim to it, and the steward wants to kill you so that he can claim the fortune all for himself. Ah, so now I see why I couldn't figure out who the bomber was. It's because there is no possible way for you to figure out the steward is the bomber, because it wasn't so much as hinted at through the rest of the game that Cassandra was pregnant, and the steward is the one suspect who wasn't established to have an ancestor aboard the Titanic. I just thought he was a waiter this whole time. The last puzzle of the game involves disarming the bomb by cutting 4 wires and jamming a screwdriver in between 2 gears. This is easier said than done because you have to position the pliers or screwdriver over one exact precise spot in order to use them. I didn't get footage of disarming the bomb because it's one of the 2 puzzles in the game that you can't go back and replay from the main menu, and if you think I'm going to suffer through this whole damn game again to get footage of it, no. Just no. After you solve the puzzle, the steward tells you he's very impressed that you managed to disarm the bomb, which he shouldn't be because he left me step-by-step instructions on how to disarm the bomb. Brilliant! Oh, and the game gives you the option of skipping the final puzzle as well, so you don't have to disarm the bomb if you really don't feel like it. So you disarm the bomb, the musician turns out to be an Interpol agent who arrests the steward, you get Edward's inheritance, the end, whatever. I swear that this must be how the game was initially pitched. Picture this. 2 developers are sitting in a room. Developer 1 says, let's make a game commemorating the 100th anniversary of the Titanic. It'll be full of fascinating facts to teach people all about the Titanic and beautiful recreations of the main rooms in the Titanic so people can see what the ship was like. Developer 2 said, sounds great, what's the gameplay going to be like? And Developer 1 replied, shit, we have to have gameplay? That's the only explanation I can think of for how this game got made, because Titanic Mystery is not a video game, it's a history lecture. Games are called games because you play them. You do not play Titanic Mystery, you look at it. You look at it, it lectures you, and then you look at it some more. There is no game here. My run through the game took about 4 hours, and it felt like 4 weeks because the game is so non-stimulating and repetitive that time just ceased to exist. Making a game in memoriam of the Titanic is a nice idea, it's a noble intention, but if you're going to make a game based off the Titanic, then actually make a game! Don't half-heartedly cobble together a non-existent story with completely useless gameplay. Oh, sorry, I had to call that gameplay because it's not gameplay, because then you're just insulting the people you're selling a product to. The fact that the game is built around solving puzzles and the game gives you the option of skipping every single one of the puzzles pretty much tells you that the people who made this game didn't set out to make a game. They set out to make a documentary and they disguised it as a game. And the fact that they put so little effort into this game and put in so little effort on purpose, that just really pisses me off.
I'm Captain Miller.